I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone who is a very dear friend and someone who is your very dear friend, and frankly, every American and every person of the world who values freedom's friend, Bill Holter. Bill Holter is one of the very few people in the financial orbit who puts your interests ahead of his own. Bill doesn't need or have to do what he does. And what he does is provide you facts and data and information to put you ahead of that globalist constructed curve that ends in a brick wall with the shattering of your finances, your future, your life, and our constitutional republic. For decades, Bill has told you where that curve leads. He was demonized, he was ridiculed, he has been targeted for telling you the truth. And everything Bill Holter has told you over the years has come to pass. So what's happening now in our country and around the world on a financial standpoint, perspective, Bill's told you that this was coming and how to protect yourself. And it's my honor to have him back with us. For those of you not familiar with Bill, after a lengthy career in financial services, Bill retired in 2006. Excellent timing. Why in 2006? He saw something coming down the pipe. And he actually moved his family out of the United States. And sure as shooting, in 2007 and 2008 and 2009 and beyond, we had some huge financial issues in our country. And then Bill returned in 2011 to the United States and currently makes his home in the great state of Texas. He joined Miles Franklin, F-R-A-N-K-L-I-N, milesfranklin.com as an associate writer in 2012 and posted commentaries there for several years. Bill is a precious metals broker with Miles Franklin, milesfranklin.com. And the bottom line, folks, is Bill is one of the best forensic economic analysts in the world. And he's willing to tell you what you will never see, hear, read, or experience in the bought-off lamestream fake media, which includes Fox Business News, what I call CNBS, Bloomberg, Reuters. He puts you ahead of the curve. Oh, let's also throw the Wall Street Journal in there. It's my honor to welcome back Bill Holter. Bill, welcome back to the Insider Insight Show.
Thanks for having me back, Dave. I had to chuckle a little bit. Yeah, a lot of the conspiracy theories turned out to be conspiracy fact.
Yeah, and in between the realization that it wasn't theory, that it was fact, people like yourself, Bill, took a whole lot of heat. A whole lot of heat for telling the truth to people. So, Bill, let's focus on something coming up August 22nd through August 24th. For several weeks on my radio show and on our platform, I've spoken about the significance of this BRICS standing for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and, by the way, 41 other countries that have now either joined or want to join BRICS in their organization. They're having a meeting in South Africa, and it has been reported that at this meeting, they are going to discuss, at a minimum, possibly even start the implementation process of a gold-backed reserve currency that would be in direct competition to the United States dollar. Now, Bill, in my presentations to the public on this, I have had a lot of backlash that I'm overstating the significance of this meeting, the over-significance of the potential development of a alternative to the dollar. So, Bill, you're the expert. Am I overstating the significance of this meeting in August?
You're not overstating the significance. I'm not sure about the actual timing. Yes, they are doing a meeting the 22nd and the 23rd. It was reported in RT News, and that's the only source that has reported that there will be a gold-backed currency announced. There's no question after Russia had their Forex reserves stolen and the world watched that happen, there's no question, or there should be no question in anyone's mind, that the world definitely wants an alternative currency to the dollar to settle trade. And that's where this is going to start. If you think back to the euro before the year 2000, the euro was it was not a currency on the street. It was a currency that was used between nations. It was used between trading blocks. And I think that more than likely, if there's an announcement, and there will definitely be some announcement discussing the currency, whether they roll it out or not, I don't know. My guess is that they will announce that they're in the process of rolling it out, and it will be used for trade settlement. And trade settlement is the important thing worldwide. If you go back, hundreds of years, there have been wars over trade. Mm-hmm. What the world is tired of is the current policy of something for nothing. They're trading something and they're getting nothing, meaning whatever the product is that they're trading, they're getting dollars in return. And dollars, first off, are not backed by anything. They're strictly fiat. They're backed by the full faith and credit of, at this point, basically a bankrupt entity. And when you're talking large, huge amounts of dollars, you're talking about treasury bills. Mm-hmm. And treasury bills do what? They promise you only one thing: mm-hmm. more dollars, more of the same nothings. So as far as the 22nd, 23rd are concerned, I don't think it's going to be a light switch moment that all of a sudden, poof, the BRICS come out with a currency and the dollar's gone. But I do believe that's going to be a bell-ringing event saying that there will be a new currency rolled out. And just as any type of technology or technological event, it's going to take time to evolve. And I think you're beginning to see some front running with the weakness in the dollar just over the last month or so. I mean, we've broken through par, and that's down from 113. So we've had a 12, 13% drop in, not just over the last month, but over the last 6 or 8 months. The dollar has definitely weakened versus other foreign fiat currencies.
So one of the pushbacks against me as well, Bill, is people say, well, so let's say they don't flip a switch, but they actually gradually start to talk about this, that we're going to we've come to this agreement that we're going to introduce a gold-backed, resource-based, new reserve currency, and we're going to do this on a step-by-step basis. What people say to me is, okay, well, so they do that, Dave, and they are going to use it for settlement of oil trades or whatever it might be. Well, okay, fine. But the dollar and the system around the dollar is so strong and so massive, it won't really affect the dollar for decades to come, Dave, and surely the American public will not be adversely affected by this development. Bill, what's your take on that?
I would just say that is demented thought process, simply because the one word that you left out was leveraged. You used strong, large, widespread, blah, blah, blah. What you have to understand is that the Western financial system, the dollar system, is more over-levered than anything has ever been in the history of history. And once you change a variable, or in this instance, create a competitor, mm-hmm. what happens is you get bleeding or leakage or whatever you want to call it. And think of any Ponzi scheme, that's how they top out. Mm-hmm. is when all of a sudden they're not getting in new investors. That would be the point in time where in a Ponzi scheme you have old investors saying, hey, I want my money. Mm-hmm. And what will happen is you will have foreign sovereign wealth funds, even sovereign treasuries, liquidating dollars because they see an alternative and they realize they're not going to need all the dollars that they had been hoarding to settle trade.
Mm-hmm.
And where are those dollars going to come, or where are they going to go? They're going to end up back here in the United States, and it will create the most massive hyperinflation the world has ever seen. And I just want to be clear about this, because whenever I do interviews and I talk about hyperinflation, I get the people come, on the comment board or whatever, or email me directly, tell me, oh no, we can't have hyperinflation. It's going to be deflation. And I've said all along, Dave, we're going to have deflation and hyperinflation at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Things you need will hyperinflate in cost, and the things you have will deflate in value. And the reason they're going to deflate in value is because this whole thing is going to be a credit event.
That's right.
And when credit breaks, it does two things. Once credit breaks, the availability of new capital to purchase houses, real estate, businesses, stocks, bonds, etc., using credit, that won't be available. So the bids are going to fall apart. But on the other side of the ledger, the currency itself is debt-based. Mm-hmm. So once the debt begins to implode, so does the dollar. So it's a lose-lose situation. It's truly sad, but the standard of living of the West is going to be cut, I would think, in half at least.
So let's look at historically with the dollar bill. So the folks that believe that this is a non-event, and even if there is an alternative, it's going to be a non-event. The dollar has been the reserve currency of the world since the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1944. And the same boo birds say, well, Dave, Nixon took us off the gold standard in August of 71, and really, that didn't really affect the dollar. Well, wait. Take a look at your purchasing power in 1971 and now look at it today. Wait, you're telling me that there isn't any difference? Really? Please stop. Number two, Bill, is that in 1971, globalist Henry Kissinger cut a deal with the Saudis for the creation of the petrodollar, which is what I believe, Bill, has propped up the dollar over the ensuing years to the point we're at today. But as you said, if this new currency is going to be used for trade settlements, there is really far less use, if any use at all, for the petrodollar, because Saudi Arabia is one of the countries that's potentially going to join the BRICS group. Your take, Bill.
Right, and the Saudis have already said that they will accept yuan for oil. So the petrodollar itself, the back has been broken. And actually, I think if you go back and you look at the timing of their announcement, it's pretty much when the dollar was over 110. So that pretty much marked a top in the dollar. 1971 obviously was a huge event. We had we were already inflating, and that's the reason he took us off the gold standard, because foreign countries, specifically France, were cashing $35 in for an ounce of gold, and that was below what it was worth because of the amount of money supply outstanding. We had the inflation of the 70s, and that was broken by Volcker in 1980 to 82 by raising interest rates. And the common thought is, well, we went through a disinflationary event. Well, you can argue that, but I think it's clearly wrong, because we've had a huge inflationary event from the summer of 1982 on. And what I'm talking about are financial assets. Financial assets and real estate have exploded, and the reason being credit became much, much easier to get. Credit in the old days, in order, and when I say the old days, I'm talking about before 1933, depended on how much gold you had. Then after 1933, then you had the Federal Reserve, and the amount of credit in the system depended on what the Federal Reserve was supporting. Then, after 1971, the dollar became 100% untethered and actually became the mirror image, the opposite image of gold. And what you had happen after 1982 is the financialization of the entire system, and that was helped, or I don't want to use the word cause, but it was allowed to happen basically by the use of credit. Mm-hmm. Credit became pervasive everywhere. I mean, if you drive through a city and you look at buildings, none of those buildings were built with cash. They're all built with debt. So it was basically the biggest credit explosion in all of history under any metric, whether you're talking about nominal, real, any type of ratio you want to look at. It's been the biggest credit explosion in the history of history, and that's why you have prices of assets where they are now.
So, as we look at what's occurring here, and Bill, you mentioned the weaponization of the dollar. Well, the weaponization of the dollar in March of 22 occurred because of what happened between Russia and Ukraine. Right? So Russia goes into Ukraine, into the Donbass area, and we continue to experience all the ramifications associated with that at this point. And what our response to that was, well, we're going to confiscate your foreign reserves, right? We're going to confiscate your dollar assets. And it sent a message. Right. Bill, the reason, tell me if I'm off, one of the reasons why this meeting is happening on August 22nd through 24th in South Africa with BRICS and this discussion, let alone potential implementation of this gold-backed reserve currency, goes back to the weaponization of the dollar that occurred in March of 22 related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, once you steal someone's reserves, you've committed theft, and other nations are going to look at it, and other nations looked at that and said, that's completely bogus. I think you're saying Russia and Ukraine. It's really not Russia and Ukraine.
No,
it's Russia
NATO.
and NATO.
Russia and NATO.
And I've said this many, many times. I would urge, I think there's been 4, maybe 5 speeches that Vladimir Putin has done since the very first speech on the day of the invasion. Read his speeches and see if you can find anything in there that, if you were sitting on sitting behind the bench as a judge, is there anything that you would disagree with? I mean, each and every one of his speeches were clearly thought out. Basically, the reason they invaded, and nobody, I mean, no mainstream media, very few people talk about it. The reason for the invasion goes back to 1998, when NATO promised that they would not move 1 inch toward the Russian border. Now look at the map today versus what the map was in 1998, and Russia protested all along, where nation after nation became a NATO ally. So basically their border has been surrounded. What would the United States do if Russia all of a sudden, or China, got Mexico or Canada as an ally of theirs? I mean, what did we do in 1963 with the Cuban Missile Crisis? And that was just, basically an island. And here you've got the whole of Eastern Europe is butting up against Russia's borders. So I think it's important, Dave, that, and I try to do this myself, is rather than say Russia, Ukraine, it's Russia, NATO. And at this point, NATO is failing. You're not really reading that. You can get little glimpses of it, only teeny tiny glimpses out of mainstream media. But if you look at what's actually happening on the ground, NATO is getting their ass kicked.
And a really good indication of that was this coup that really, what were the end results of the coup? Vladimir Putin consolidated his power. He got rid of some people that were in the Russian orbit that might have been disloyal to him. His buddy of 32 years, Prigozhin, got some type of cash from the West, a huge amount of cash that ultimately is going to go to Putin, that's ultimately going to go to fight Ukraine. And it exposed the Ukraine's counteroffensive to the point where they now say, hey, you know what, that counteroffensive really didn't go so well. Bill, if you distill it all down, the Russia-Ukraine real NATO war over there could be seen as a war for the monetary system of the world. Is that an overstatement?
I would say it's a battle for the monetary system. There's no question about it. And the coup did quite a few things. One, I don't have any way to prove it. It's just my personal opinion. I think the CIA got punked, or the Pentagon got punked for whatever it was, $6.7 billion that all of a sudden we found. I think they got punked. It also allowed Russia to move troops under the guise of we're defending Moscow. We're moving troops because of the movement by the Wagner Group. I think it was the West playing checkers and Putin playing 3D chess.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's just my personal opinion. But I have no way to prove that. I have no intel. You have no intel. But we'll see how it all plays out.
And is it just a coincidence that as NATO is losing the war in Ukraine, this meeting in South Africa is occurring? Is that just a coincidence?
It may be just a coincidence. Just from a timing standpoint, I don't know whether it has to do with this counteroffensive failed or whatever. It just seems to me, it was because this was announced several months back, so there was no way to know exactly where things would be today. I think it's just a logical progression step is to have a meeting. And Dave, just to be clear, whatever they come out with in August 22nd, 23rd, it's already been decided.
Right.
I mean, they're not going there.
No, they're not going around to kick it around to get people's input, right?
No, not at all.
So, Bill, let's take a couple different scenarios. August 22nd, 23rd, 24th comes around, and we're going to take two scenarios. Communique is released, and there's absolutely nothing in the communique about a gold-backed new reserve currency for trading purposes. What happens?
That will not happen.
Yeah, I know.
A currency will be discussed. Trade will be discussed. And when they discuss the currency, will gold be a part of that? That I don't know. If nothing happens, I mean, if they simply discuss a new coming currency, then it keeps us on a slow burn.
And let's say the announcement is, we have discussed this, and we are forming a working group that's going to be comprised of the BRICS plus countries, in addition, the BRICS countries plus 41 other countries, including Saudi Arabia, to develop a reserve currency that is backed by gold, backed by natural resources for trading purposes. What happens if that's in the communique?
Well, you will see a global financial hiccup. When I say hiccup, the ground will shake. Now, will the West be able to hold it together, maybe for a couple weeks, maybe for a month or 2 months. I don't know, but there will be huge movements of capital based on an announcement like that. And again, because of the leverage in the system, the system will fail. And when the system, we talked about this before we started recording, Dave. When the system fails, this is going to be a 72-hour event. The globe's going to spin 3 times, and the financial world will not even resemble what it did 72 hours ago, because credit will collapse. And the derivatives will collapse. No one's talked about, very few people have talked about derivatives, over time. And look what happened in 2008, 2009. And you can double or triple the effects this time around. The derivatives outstanding, they're probably over $2 quadrillion, and that's bigger than the value of everything on the planet. And when those things melt down, everything melts down.
And Bill, there are people that believe that the United States is a financial fortress built on a solid footing and will be able to take this big hit if this comes out of this meeting. Bill, we're in, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, we're $33 trillion debt, not including the unfunded liabilities. We just built up another $1 trillion since that wonderful budget bill that came out. We have the following data out there. More than 105 million working age Americans do not have a job right now. Most Americans can't afford an emergency greater than $2,000. 18% of Americans can't handle an emergency greater than $100. We have corporate bankruptcies currently reaching the highest level since 2010. We have unemployment numbers that are nothing more than a fraud. Bill, we're not fortress financial, the United States financial fortress. We're the United States financial quicksand, aren't we?
Yeah, and the way to illustrate that, just use simple math. At this point, we're approaching a required annual debt service of about $1 trillion a year, which is actually larger than the defense budget. And that defense budget is larger than all the defense budgets for the rest of the world combined. So when you use the math of interest only to continue and service the debt of $1 trillion, that math right there tells you we're bankrupt. Now, when you take into account the mathematical insolvency, and then you add to that, just look at what's happening in our justice system. The U.S., without a doubt, is the biggest and worst banana republic in all of history, because a banana republic is not just financial; it's also cronyism and the rule of law breaking down, and that's where we are in the United States.
So, Bill, when we survey the landscape and we look at the fact that we are in quicksand, as opposed to solid bedrock foundation of financial stability. Bill, that there are many people that might look at that situation, if they want to look at that situation, and say, "Wow, that's because of incompetence. It's because of neglect. Bill, tell me if I'm wrong. It's willful that we're in this situation. This is not a coincidence. Am I off?"
No, you're absolutely right. When I first started writing in 2007, that was one of the things I said, was that the policies that were being implemented were too stupid to be mistakes. Mm-hmm. They had to be a plan. Mm-hmm. And I've believed that ever since, and just watched what has been put in place time after time after time. And if you look at the policies that are in place, it's the willful, purposeful destruction of the United States.
And why do they want that, Bill?
Right, that's what I was going to get at, is the reason the United States has to be taken down is because we were the bedrock of the rule of law. We were the bedrock of individual freedoms, liberties. And the United States has got to be taken down in order for, I guess, lack of better, the New World Order taking over and taking everyone's liberties with it. And
with that, their financial version, if you will, of their solution is, it's all falling apart, but we can help you. And it's called, just sign over the remainder of your freedoms and liberties and financial future to our central bank digital currencies, or our basket of paper fiat backed by nothing currency special drawing rights. That's where they're trying to herd the masses, isn't it, Bill?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody who looks at a digital currency and can't understand that your life can be completely controlled, where you spend your money, how much money you spend, or whether you even get to spend any of your money. They'll just starve people out. People like you and I they will shut our accounts off, and that'll be that. It will be the powers that be, it'll be their way to stomp down any type of dissent.
And Bill, we've already seen this. Trudeau and Freeland, World Economic Forum puppet, overplayed their hands. They did it to the truckers, only this would be on a massive scale, not just to what they did to the truckers, right?
That's correct. And the only hope, the only hope for the United States is the fact that it's heavily armed and has the Second Amendment.
And there are...
Because,
go ahead.
Dave, think about this. You're talking about Canada and New Zealand, right? New
Correct.
Zealand was the second one you mentioned. And you might as well throw Australia in there, and you can throw Britain in there. They do not have, the population does not have guns, and people don't understand, some people understand, but the vast majority do not understand that the Second Amendment was put into the Constitution so that not so much for self-defense, not so much for hunting, although that was, part of the thought process. It was your own protection against your own government.
Yeah. In case things went south.
Right, and they've gone pretty far south at this point.
Well, they surely have, Bill. And to those people that say, well, there are ballasts, there are stabilizers in the system to in case there is financial chaos. Well, our country, the world, runs on energy, runs on petroleum. Bill, it's not a coincidence that as the financial system is melting, Bill, our strategic petroleum reserves, Bill, they're not zero, but Bill, the caverns are being drained at an unprecedented rate.
Yeah, the SPR is at the lowest level in, 30 or 40 years.
Right.
And we're poking the bear. We're provoking China at a time when our strategic petroleum reserve is at multi-decade lows, and at the same time, the quiet part was spoken out loud that we've run out of ammunition. Really? How is that even possible? We're the biggest defense budget by multiples over anyone else in the world, and our ammunition is running low? Not possible. It's all a plan.
So, Bill, let's take it to the next step then. Over centuries' time, when things go south, financially, stability-wise, what has been the protector, the insurance policy, up to the ultimate degree, has been precious metals. Bill, you are an expert in the precious metals arena. So, where are we with supply? Where are we with demand? And when you look behind the curtain at some of the numbers that you're privy to, commitment of traders, the movement of gold and silver from warehouses, where are we in the precious metals world?
I can tell you over the last probably 60 days or so, the retail demand has definitely slowed, and you can see that in the premiums. The premiums have come down quite a bit, but that's still it's still not easy to in certain products. And I'm going to use junk as an example. Junk silver is extremely thin at this point. I think if anybody came in with a $5 million order now, it would be probably a week or more before it was filled. And I know this because I did a large order last week and basically cleaned out everything we could find. Looking at other firms, there's very little available. And I use junk as an example because it has not been minted since 1964. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, junk silver is going to become the most sought-after form of silver in the United States. And the reason being, it's the smallest, most recognizable form of silver there is. And in a broken down system, people are going to find out they've got all these 1 ounce bars or generic rounds or sovereigns or even eagles. What good are they if you're going to a farmer and you want a dozen or 2 dozen eggs for barter? You're not going to be able to get change back. So I think junk is going to be, I think it's the best form of ownership that anyone in the United States can have.
And junk is
gold is concerned.
Junk is not junk.
No, it's constitutional silver is what the formal name is, meaning it's 1964 and earlier U.S. dimes and quarters. So the formal name is constitutional silver. It's had the nickname of junk silver, for years and years. Now, when we get to gold, the supply seems to be ample of gold eagles, of other foreign sovereigns and bars. I can tell you that the supply of pre-1933 gold is extremely thin, and the advantage of pre-1933 gold is that it's considered a collectible. It's legally considered a collectible, and in the event of a confiscation, they would have to write not just gold bullion, they would have to write anything that has gold content. And that there'd be lawsuits for years and years on that. So your best form of gold in the U.S. is the pre-1933 gold, simply because it is legally considered a collectible.
And when you look behind the curtain at the numbers, warehousing of silver and the like, what's it telling you, Bill?
Well, just take a look at, for instance, COMEX silver. The amount of silver inventory that COMEX has available for delivery has literally crashed. It was well over, I think it was 140, 150 million ounces, and we're hovering at 30 million ounces now. There are so many more contracts, paper contracts on COMEX outstanding than there are ounces available to deliver. And again, mark my words, this will be a 72-hour event, and in that 72 hours, you will see failure to deliver across the board, not only in gold and silver, but you'll see it in other products. You're going to see force majeure declared all over the place. And one thing, Dave, we've not talked about, and we did not talk about before the call, something really big that mainstream's not talking about, and even the alt press is not, or alt media is not talking about, is the beginning of China now to clamp down on strategic minerals. Mm-hmm. Because they control the vast majority of that supply. And actually, I believe Tanzania is probably second place. But a lot of things cannot be made or created without those minerals. And do you really want your enemy in a war to control the supply of what you need to make bombs?
No, and this is a huge problem, and we don't have the capabilities in our country at this point to compensate for that clamping down.
No, because it's in the ground wherever it's in the ground.
Right. So, Bill, when you survey the landscape and you're in touch with many people, either through the internet or through your personal interactions, if someone comes up to you, Bill, and says, Bill, I'm really worried about what's going on. What are the one or two best moves I can make to protect myself from a financial standpoint at this point? Is it too late? If it's not too late, what can I do?
Well, there's several things, and not necessarily in this order, but you'd really want to be trying to do this all at once. My suggestion would be take the week off from your job. Get as much of your capital out of the financial system as you can, and get that into gold and silver and have that delivered to you or vaulted or what have you, but get it out of the system. While you're on your 1 week vacation or whatever, stockpile food, try to become as self-sufficient as possible. Water purifiers, a source of energy, whether it be generators, and I'm not a big fan of generators simply because they make noise. Mm-hmm. And unless you're really out from the population, it's going to be like a bug light at night. You're going to attract people. So solar is a good thing, depending upon where you live or how far south you live. But that's a timely, that you can't really get done in a week's time. But basically try to become as self-sufficient as you possibly can. Make sure you're armed. Make sure you can protect your position. Go out, talk to farmers. I've talked to farmers. I go to farmers markets. I've got farmers around me where I live, and I've talked to all of them as a pre-thought, if you will. Will you accept junk silver for eggs or for chickens or for pigs or for whatever? And I'm going to tell you 9 out of 10 farmers will say yes.
Yep.
You might have the new styled hydroponic farmers who don't have a clue about the earth, if you will. I'm probably going to get some bad comments for saying that, but what I'm talking about is old-fashioned farmers understand not old-fashioned but real values, and they want something for something as opposed for them giving you something for nothing. And many of the farmers do view dollar bills as paper nothings.
Bill, educate our listeners on how they can be in touch with you on a very regular basis. You have a phenomenal website, Bill Holter, Holter, BillHolter.com. Bill, educate our listeners on how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, you can go to BillHolter.com. It's only been up for, I guess, maybe not even quite 6 months yet. But it's very similar to what we were doing at JS Mindset. So it's a similar layout, similar type of information. If you want to contact me, there is a contact button at BillHolter.com. Or if you want to contact me directly, my business email is bholter@hotmail.com.
Bill, I'd like to thank you for your decades of dedication to the public. Your perseverance, dedication, and sacrifice are far ahead of the pack. And in the process, you have been targeted by folks within the globalist syndicate and globalist cult for your honesty and for your sage advice. And your sage advice is always focused on individual people, on their empowerment, on them being protected. And I thank you, Bill, on behalf of millions of people for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. And I thank you, folks, for joining us today. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.